This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Energy is everything. It is the root of all science. But how much do we really know about it? Dr. Alphonzo Monzo shows us how energy, specifically frequencies, work for human health, and even how YeHoVaH used frequencies to create the world with his voice. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. It is Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. Glad to see you here. Thank you for being here. Now, frequency medicine is the future. I'm a naturopath. I'm convinced of that. I think that when we give people supplements, this is going to look like old school very soon. So, it's also the past, this frequency medicine thing. It's not just new. Way back in the past, like at creation past. So before you dismiss frequency medicine as some kind of new age thing, watch tonight's episode with Dr. Monzo, and you will find out it is a very age-old thing, and it may be the key to human health once and for all. It's episode 2 of the Aleph Tav body system with Biophysics of creation. That is tonight's episode with Dr. Alphonzo Monzo. Now, speaking of creation, we've created something kind of cool, but there's only a few days left to get it. So let's talk about that with Angie Clark and Michael Rood. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Scott.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. You have one, Michael. I have one. These are the hoodies. Blue ones, navy ones, white ones. There's only 5 days left to get it. Michael, what are we seeing on the front here?
This is the name of God, and Naomi Gordon released on our show that they found over 1,000 manuscripts with the name with all the vowel points on it.
And that's what we have here.
So this is an official photograph from the Aleppo Codex.
Yep, that's what this is. It's we literally scanned it and we made a t-shirt out of it. So people walk around and they say, what is that? I've seen that before. What is that? And you can explain the name of God to them. Yeah. And then the verse underneath is Exodus 3:15. This is my name forever. Angie, speaking of verses, you had something to say about that.
Yes, just talking about the frequency of our bodies and everything.
Yes.
So people have probably seen this before, but I've watched people with these little frequency monitors, and they'll hook them up to trees and mushrooms, and they'll have a frequency. And so I was thinking about that this morning, and I'm like, Father, show me in your scripture, just show me. And he does. It's so wonderful. It's in Psalms 148, and it talks about let everything praise his name.
It's verse 13 you've got there. Okay.
Let everything praise his name, and it goes from the mountains, the hills, the fruit trees, and the cedars. And I thought about them hooking up those little frequency monitors, and they're literally praising the name of YeHoVaH.
Well, we talked about when in the makeup room with Avia, how even the stars have a sound to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and you could literally
Beautiful.
And you can literally hear. I know some of these they need frequency monitors to hear this, but when I lived in Canada, people think I'm nuts when I tell them this. But if you live somewhere north and you've seen the northern lights on a very, very cold night, and you've gone out to the middle of a field somewhere in a farm where there's no lights, no human noise at all, you can hear them crackling. You can hear the light crackling in the sky. Yeah, very, very faint, but it sounds like tissue paper or something.
Everything praises the name. Everything.
Indeed. The rocks cry out.
The rocks
right, Michael?
cry out.
The rocks will cry out, literally and figuratively. It's crazy stuff. I love it. What Dr. Monzo is talking about this week. Last week, hopefully, was an eye-opener. This week, my goodness, there's more coming. And by the end of this series, you're going to want to know, how do I do this? How exactly do I do this? That's what this month's love gift is all about. We can't show you on YouTube because YouTube's not going to like that. But we know you will.
They take it down.
They would take it down. That's absolutely right. They want to take down everything useful. So we're gonna put it in your hands in DVD form. So they can take, you can do this DVD, Blu-ray, or on the michaelrood.tv app. So this is for a gift of $50 or more. For a gift of $100 or more, you get the teaching. And Angie, what do we have here?
Beautiful mezuzah, and it looks like the board, the cutting board that we had not too long
Mission
ago.
Monday. Yeah.
I mean, they're a perfect match for each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it will come with the scripture inside, and you can see through it. So you can actually see the scroll in there.
I don't think we've offered one before where you could literally do that, because it'll be on the door frame, and when people approach, they can see that something's in there.
Yeah, there's a little scroll in there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Beautiful.
And the scroll will come with it, or you could put something else of your own that your family treasures. You could put a verse in there.
And like ourselves, these are all handcrafted, and they're all unique.
Yes. Handcrafted, I believe. These are handcrafted by women in Israel.
I believe you're right.
Yep.
I believe you're right. And there may be flaws in them, but that's part of the uniqueness in them.
Just like us.
Just like us.
Uniquely imperfect.
Uniquely imperfect.
I love it.
It's beautiful.
And the rest of the love gift is this here, a beautiful Shabbat Shalom on the front. There's a blessing from Rood Awakening on the back. You can watch the commercial to find out more about that. Thank you very much for supporting Rood Awakening. This is how you can support us and get something really cool in return. So again, thank you for supporting this ministry. Very important, so that we can even bring you people like Dr. Monzo.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so Dr. Alphonzo Monzo shows us how energy, specifically frequencies, work for human health, and even how YeHoVaH used frequencies to create the world with his voice. However, the next voice you hear will be that of Michael Rood, sharing a little known fact about the Kiddush. Take a look.
On Friday, the 6th day of the week, the markets in Jerusalem are filled with challah that is done differently than it is any other day of the week. On that day, the challah is covered with honey, and it is covered with raisins, because it is a shadow picture of when the Messiah reigns upon the earth in the Sabbath day or the Sabbath millennium, when life on earth will be sweet. Yeshua, the last night that he had with his disciples before his crucifixion, he took bread and he blessed the Most High. And he said, Baruch atah YeHoVaH Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, YeHoVaH, our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And he said, this represents my body, which will be broken for you. As often as you do this in remembrance of me. And so the sanctification of the Sabbath, the Kiddush that we do, sets apart this day and sets apart this very thing that we had rehearsed from the time that Yeshua gave this to his disciples. And then Yeshua blessed the Most High with this blessing that Melchizedek said to Abraham when he blessed the Most High. Baruch atah YeHoVaH Eloheinu melech haolam, Borei pri hagafen. Blessed are you, YeHoVaH, our God, the King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this represents the renewed covenant paid for in my blood. As often as you do this in remembrance of me. With that, we do exhibit the Lord's death and what he paid for our redemption until he comes.
The Bible tells us that God is light, and he also spoke the world into existence. So wait a minute, how did that happen? How did he speak and things were created? Is there a relationship between light and sound? We're gonna find out more about that today. We talked a little bit about it last week, but Dr. Alphonzo Monzo is going to explain more of that today. Welcome back, Dr. Monzo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for being here. This is such cool stuff. And you know, we think of things like we touched on last week, like EMF, even from your hair dryer and from your cell phone and from all these things around us that disrupt our body's electrical system, are really damaging to what God had created, because it is also a what's the word for that, for the electrical system of the body?
Yeah, electromagnetic.
Electromagnetic, yeah. So, I mean, that really interferes with things. You know, and you can really go on a rabbit trail with that type of stuff. But we're gonna learn more today about the biophysics of creation itself. And you're gonna explain this to us, so please take it away.
Okay, so we're on part 2.
Of your book, by the way, the Aleph Body System.
Yep.
This is more like a textbook that has all the information that you were talking about today and what you discovered that you relayed last week, that I hope people will look at, and where the system came from and how you discovered it, and what YeHoVaH showed you about having the Hebrew letters actually associated with all of these points on the body.
Yeah, so last week we covered energy in Bible and why it's not deception. And so now this week we have to get into the topic of biophysics, because most people go, bio what?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Right.
But to understand the YeHoVaH body system, we have to know a little bit about biophysics.
Okay.
I call this the biophysics of creation.
Take it away, Professor.
And we have our little warning here that free use, we have some videos we're going to use, and we have free use of videos for educational purposes.
Okay, very good.
So we probably saw this the last time. This was the definition of the YeHoVaH body system. So if people want to hear it again, the YeHoVaH body system is a Hebrew electromagnetic telecommunication system of the human body. This system is made up of the basic building blocks of all of creation, the Hebrew letters, which control all the information for proper function, shape, form, and animation of the human body. So the letters control the system, and then the system controls everything else. And when we really get into it here later on in a couple episodes, we're going to get into how this system is simply a laying on of hands. So you're going to be touching different Hebrew points on the body with your hands, and that's why the body's able to do what it does.
So just on a personal level, do you think that when we were shown that, like, Yeshua, when he laid hands on people, he was using this or some form of this?
I think he was using some form of this.
Wow.
And I've even seen some of the really good faith healers out there when they pray and actually are intentional about where they place their hands, and they're not just knocking people over and stuff. But oftentimes they're touching these points. And it's very interesting when they touch different things, like, oh, I know what you're doing.
Yeah. And the question is, do they know what they're doing? Or is YeHoVaH just leading them to do this? Like, that's a real interesting question.
Exactly.
Wow.
So biophysics, what is biophysics? So we have, it's a two-word, bio and physics. So bio means biology, and physics obviously is the study of energy and the natural sciences of the world. And so biophysics is combining those two things. So that is the study of energetic or electromagnetic systems in physical biology. And there's all types of off branches to this. I mean, even forms of biochemistry, molecular biology, physiology, nanotechnology, bioengineering. A lot of these all base some of their understanding from biophysics now today. And then in more holistic avenues like we're in, this might be called something more like bioenergetics. And what they mean by that is using energetic sources to treat biology. So maybe it's laser light, maybe it's sunlight, maybe it's sound therapy, maybe it's magnetism. These are all forms of using different forms of energy with the physical body.
Now, you were just telling me before the cameras came on, because someone else was in the studio here, their spouse was using lasers with a local chiropractor here to help with neuropathy. And you were saying that you can use lasers on these points we're going to explain.
Yes.
So, wow, I'm curious to know what that does. Maybe you don't want to get into that just yet, but.
No, it's laser is a very coherent form of light. So that's really important because you need coherence. And it can carry a lot of information. So it's a pure form of coherent light. And the interesting thing about light is it can carry information. So we have laser, and we have these little vials that go in front of the laser, and the different vials have a liquid substance that's programmed with different energetic signatures. So it's information. And you put that in front of the laser, and the laser goes through and picks up the information and carries it into your body. And so then you're giving information to the body. And I mean, it works like, it's like Star Trek.
That just sounds, I was going to say, that all sounds like very like science fiction.
Yeah.
But this is real science, and it works. It's just, because like you said in the last episode, that all of this is just based on information being, you know, transported, I guess, to the right parts of the body to make them do certain things.
Yep, they have a big fancy word for it called biophotomodulation. And what that is, bio is a body, photo is a photo light, and modulation, the ability to put information together and carry out a form. So biophotomodulation is how different wavelengths of light stimulate your body to make different chemicals. And we know this, like D. Hormone D is made in the body when you're out in the sun. And we now know there's all kinds of processes in the body, all kinds of hormones and chemicals that are made by different wavelengths of light. So finding the right color and the right type of light can stimulate your body to make its own chemistry. So your body is its own factory.
Is it that same type of technology or thought, at least, that when people use a rice machine at home, things like that? Same idea? basically?
Same idea.
Okay.
Same idea. So in bioenergetics, we have a whole list of different things. And you can see up here in the PowerPoint, we might call this bioenergetics. It might be called energy medicine, energy therapies. You might have laser therapy, light therapy, sound therapy, Chinese medicine, Aleph top body. There you go, Rife machine.
Oh, there it is right there. Okay. Yep.
Frequency-based therapies, biofeedback, neurofeedback. There's heart math. There's energetic testing. There's touch therapies. There's magnetic therapies or pulsed electromagnetic fields. So there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Heart math. That is one I have not heard of.
Yeah, heart math. That is kind of like a form of kind of biofeedback.
Okay.
But it's testing your the autonomic nervous system to see if you're in fight or flight. And then I think it's giving a response back, and you try to learn how to keep yourself in a calm, relaxed state and what stresses you and when your autonomic nervous system's starting to get off, when you're starting to get into fight or flight mode and not rest.
Oh, wow. Interesting stuff.
They call it heart math. And they do a lot of really interesting research too on studying how far the energetic field of the heart actually goes out in the environment. And I think they said it's, is it 10 feet, I think, which is interesting because what was going on during you-know-what, when they were telling everyone separate.
Oh, yeah, okay.
More than 10 feet, so that a lot of people wonder if it's because that's how our bodies communicate energetically. So if you're more than 10 feet, you're cutting off all communication between people.
So this, okay, now getting a little bit sidetracked here, but I want to know this. So if that's the case, that sort of brings out to people start thinking about, okay, wait a minute, is this where we get the idea of auras and things like this? But so there is a true YeHoVaH-based science to our bodies that creates what other people might call an aura.
That is true, yes.
Okay. Okay, good to know.
And there are some devices that can measure the light. So they can see it as different shades of light.
Okay.
Basically, it should be producing like the 7 colors of the rainbow, which I think we're going to get into at some point.
Oh my gosh, okay. I'm just going to let you go because you got lots of stuff here, but that's, I'm just so curious about all of this.
So on the screen, on the PowerPoint, I put a definition there if people want to see it. And this comes from Encyclopedia of Energetic Anatomy. It's a pretty, it's called the subtle body, and that's actually the Encyclopedia of the Energetic Anatomy is the subtitle. It's a really interesting book, but it says bioenergetics is the evaluation and therapeutic use of energy, such as heat, light, sound, gravity, pressure, vibration, electricity, magnetism, chemical energy, electromagnetic-based forces that surround and interpede us. So it's all around us. It's going through us.
Interpenetrate.
Yeah, interpenetrate.
That's a word I've never used. Okay.
Yeah, not much. And so there's all types of methods out there, and I'm sure you can drive yourself crazy looking up all the different methods online. And so we have to talk a little bit here about the electromagnetic spectrum. We briefly mentioned it last week. So in science and physics, there's something called the electromagnetic spectrum, and that's what everything exists on. And you can see on the chart here, there's a little range for your cell phones and your microwave and your computers and power lines. So everything's on that range. And then there's a visible spectrum range, kind of like right in the middle, which is actually the 7 colors of the rainbow. That's the visible light spectrum, what we can see. And everything outside the visible light spectrum that's on this chart, we can't actually see it. So it's unseen, but it's affecting us. It's all around us. And we would call this energy or radiation. Now, most countries in the world would call what we call frequency or energy radiation.
Okay.
And so radiation isn't necessarily a bad word. In the United States, when we think radiation, we're thinking that stuff that turns you into the Hulk, you know, or melts you or something.
Or cancer therapy, or a nuclear blast or something.
Right.
Yeah.
But in most countries outside America, energy, frequency, and radiation are used interchangeably. So radiation is just a form of energy on the electromagnetic spectrum. So then we have a short video here that's going to explain the electromagnetic spectrum for everybody.
Okay, very good.
Something surrounds you, bombards you, some of which you can't see, touch, or even feel. Every day, everywhere you go. It is odorless and tasteless, yet you use it and depend on it every hour of every day. Without it, the world you know could not exist. What is it? Electromagnetic radiation. These waves spread across a spectrum from very short gamma rays to X-rays, ultraviolet rays, visible light waves, even longer infrared waves, microwaves, to radio waves which can measure longer than a mountain range. This spectrum is the foundation of the information age and of our modern world. Your radio, remote control, text message, television, microwave oven, even a doctor's X-ray, all depend on waves within the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic waves, or EM waves, are similar to ocean waves in that both are energy waves. They transmit energy. EM waves are produced by the vibration of charged particles and have electrical and magnetic properties. But unlike ocean waves that require water, EM waves travel through the vacuum of space at the constant speed of light. EM waves have crests and troughs like ocean waves. The distance between crests is the wavelength. While some EM wavelengths are very long and are measured in meters, many are tiny and are measured in billionths of a meter, nanometers. The number of these crests that pass a given point within 1 second is described as the frequency of the wave. One wave, or cycle, per second is called a hertz. Long EM waves, such as radio waves, have the lowest frequency and carry less energy. Adding energy increases the frequency of the wave and makes the wavelength shorter. Gamma rays are the shortest, highest energy waves in the spectrum. So, as you sit watching TV, not only are there visible light waves from the TV striking your eyes, but also radio waves transmitting from a nearby station, and microwaves carrying cell phone calls and text messages, and waves from your neighbor's Wi-Fi, and GPS units in the cars driving by. There is a chaos of waves from all across the spectrum passing through your room right now. With all these waves around you, how can you possibly watch your TV show? Similar to tuning a radio to a specific radio station, our eyes are tuned to a specific region of the EM spectrum and can detect energy with wavelengths from 400 to 700 nanometers, the visible light region of the spectrum. Objects appear to have color because EM waves interact with their molecules. Some wavelengths in the visible spectrum are reflected, and other wavelengths are absorbed. This leaf looks green because EM waves interact with the chlorophyll molecules. Waves between 492 and 577 nanometers in length are reflected, and our eye interprets this as the leaf being green. Our eyes see the leaf as green, but cannot tell us anything about how the leaf reflects ultraviolet, microwave, or infrared waves. To learn more about the world around us, scientists and engineers have devised ways to enable us to see beyond that sliver of the EM spectrum called visible light.
All right. Interesting video, huh?
It is. I saw a very real example of this when I stopped at a stoplight the other day, and I was playing some music, streaming music, and the music went off. So I thought, oh, I must be in a dead zone where there's no cell signal. So I went to turn on or see what was happening, and in that, you know how you could see different Wi-Fi coming from different. So there was Wi-Fi coming from cars beside me, a Wi-Fi from the tire repair shop across the street, and even from this pest control place that was way across the road when I was sitting at the intersection. So yeah, those waves come more than you think they do from further distances than you think they do.
Yes. And if you don't know that, then you can jump to a bunch of conclusions and think all this stuff is voodoo and weird, and it's like, but we're using it every day with our technology.
Yeah, and you could see it on your cell phone. There's all these things coming at you, and it's displaying it right there for you on the screen.
And I think it's even interesting to say that even in the modern medical field, they are finding ways to measure and use these type of techniques to see things in the body. So do people think about your x-rays and CAT scans and you name it. These are all forms of trying to see into the body by using EMF or EM waves. So technically they're using energy medicine too, in maybe a different way, mainly as diagnostics.
When Yeshua laid hands on people to heal them, what exactly was he doing? Could it be that he was employing an ancient healing practice long since forgotten? And what if you could do the same thing today to stop a heart attack, bleeding, an allergic reaction, even choking?
but we've had people who were bitten by a poisonous snake, and they did this application, and when they moved their hands, all the poison and the stuff was just sitting at the top of the skin, and they just wipe it off.
How to Heal with Your Bare Hands with Dr. Alphonzo Monzo shows us step by step how to use the Hebrew alphabet to correlate touch points on the body that unlock seemingly miraculous healing capabilities. This teaching is not for sale and it's not available anywhere online. Instead, we'd like to give you this teaching as a thank you gift for donating to A Rood Awakening International. When you donate $50 as a love gift in January, you'll get How to Heal with Your Bare Hands with Dr. Alphonzo Monzo on DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming on the michaelrood.tv app. Donate $100 and you'll get How to Heal with Your Bare Hands, plus a blue marble glass mezuzah with elegant gold accents and a scripture scroll to put inside. Donate $300 and you'll get How to Heal with Your Bare Hands, the blue marble glass mezuzah, and a natural wood 3-dimensional plaque featuring the menorah, the word shalom in both Hebrew and English, and a message of blessing from A Rood Awakening on the back. These gifts are a limited time offer from Michael Rood to thank you for your support. Make your donation today and receive the $50 gift, the $100 gift, or the $300 gift. Thank you. When you donate to receive the love gift, you ensure that these teachings keep coming from A Rood Awakening International. Use your smartphone to scan the QR code on your screen to donate now and receive these limited time gifts. Or call 888-766-3610. Or get your gifts online with a donation at monthlylovegift.com.
I didn't realize that there's EMF capital letters and EMF lowercase letters, and there's a big difference here because usually when we hear EMF, and even when I hear EMF, I think, oh, that's just evil, bad, it does bad things to your body, and that's just a negative thing all around. But is it?
It's not necessarily. So EMF is an electromagnetic force or field or frequency, and usually that's capital letters. So capital EMF, electromagnetic field or electromagnetic frequency. And so everything that plugs into a outlet that runs off of 60 hertz, or that has a moving battery or a motor with a battery, usually will produce an electromagnetic field or frequency. And so that's an electric and magnetic field together, creating a field. So everything we have today creates basically an EMF, everything man-made. Now, lowercase EMF is electromagnetic force. So that's more like the force to move something. So that's a completely different thing. That's more talking about forces to move and energy to move things in physics, not something that's being produced by an electromagnetic RAN-powered device.
Okay.
So that's the difference in that. I put right here, not to be confused with lowercase. So that's an electromagnetic force. And usually that's measured like in volts. And so that's important. So anything that has a motor, battery, moving parts, runs on AC current is going to produce that electromagnetic field. Now, what's really interesting is in nature also produces electromagnetic frequencies, but it's different. And it's probably closer to what we would see like in DC circuits. So there was a big debate between Tesla and what was he? He was the understand of Edison. There we go. So Edison, Tesla was his understudy. And we don't know because we weren't there. And there's all kinds of different stories on the history. But some people thought Tesla was the genius and Edison was trying to hold him back and he broke away. There's other stories that say that Edison believed that you could create AC current, but he thought it was dangerous and that it shouldn't be done. Well, that's the story we don't over here. And it turns out that, yeah, most AC current-based systems create EMFs that really interfere with our body's communication system. And they're really not good. And typically what we hear is these devices are perfectly safe for the body because if you remember that electromagnetic spectrum, they're over on the side of non-ionizing radiation, which means it's a form of radiation that doesn't heat the tissues. And because of that, it's assumed to be safe. But they're not thinking about the body as a telecommunication system. They're not thinking about the idea that these waves could be communicating with your body and messing up your body's communication systems because...
Regardless of heat.
Regardless of heat, because we don't teach that. That stuff doesn't exist. That's voodoo. right? So that type of science really isn't taught mainstream. Only people like myself, biophysicists, study this stuff. So we have this big disconnect between the people making the technology, the people who understand how the body works, and then the people who understand the electromagnetic side of the human body. And most of the time, those people don't all come together. So in the medical field, it's just, well, does it heat the tissue? No? Okay, good, you're good. Don't worry about it. And then that's where people get in confusion on how this stuff is bad. But one of the things I want to point out here is there's a big difference between the EM fields that we find in nature and man-made. And it seems to be the ones in nature that are produced by plants and rocks and herbs and everything that Yah created are in tune and in harmony with our body.
This is why people do grounding.
Yes.
With bare feet on the grass, so that you are reconnected with the frequency of the earth and everything there, and because it's the same as yours. So you need to just take the insulation out of the picture, i.e. your shoes or the wood floors that you're walking on in your house, and reconnect with that.
Yep, this is like back to Eden, right? So we have to remember that Yah created the earth specifically for us, and he put us here. He created everything we needed. And we don't have all the answers to how everything works, but it's very detailed. The more we get into this, it's like, wow, you mean different plants have different frequencies and different wavelengths, and they reflect different forms of light. And we don't think of any of that. We just see all blue, green, but very interesting. So everything found in nature has an energy field and frequency. These fields are very subtle, and we're still somewhat limited to being able to fully measure them, or at least the general population. There is very advanced machines you need to measure these things that are very expensive. We have simple ones that we can do for measuring like man-made stuff. Man-made stuff is pretty much easier to measure. You need like a tri-field meter, an RF meter, and you can measure most things to see if they're dangerous to the body. But the subtle energetic frequencies of plants and herbs and oils, you need a very sophisticated technology to measure that. But it can be done.
You know, it's funny how we have in the Bible that, the rocks will cry out.
Yes.
Michael Rood actually has a teaching titled that. But you almost think of, did YeHoVaH sort of, as a hint to future generations who would eventually discover that, oh, the rocks actually do have a frequency? Or was it just sort of a, hey, if people don't cry out, the rocks will, because they're the most likely thing to do this. But yeah, it's sort of maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a little bit of both. And when you consider how large the electromagnetic spectrum is, and what we see in here is like just a fraction. It's like, what other colors and sounds don't we perceive? I mean, we know animals perceive things that we don't. So it's going to be interesting when we get to heaven to see, what do we see then compared to what we see now?
Right. I think people are coming around to this idea because you see on YouTube, there's the, what is it, the 432 hertz? Which hertz is the, that's the calming frequency?
432 or 444.
442, 444. Okay.
Those are both what we would call the ancient Sephargio, which actually the Aleph body is related to that too.
Oh, okay, very good. And people will play that on YouTube to relax at night. And even some of the composers of centuries ago knew this. So there's
the ancient Sephargio was how all musical objects were tuned. Now there's a really interesting whole notes. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He did some research too, and he went to Israel and everything, and he figured out just by looking at David's harp that the type of wood that he built out is not the type of wood you usually build a harp out of. It's really hard. And so he said his note would have been 4 cents higher, which was where he came to the 444 was probably where they tuned C to the note of 444 or 432. Both of those work. And that's interesting because then everything he played would have had more of a healing frequency. It would have been in tune with the body. But somewhere along the line, I don't think anyone really knows. They say maybe either the Catholic Church or the Rockefellers, someone changed the musical tone. And so now everything is tuned to 440 instead of 432 or 444. So the music we play today is not quite in tune with how the body
And some
functions.
bands will actually purposely go back to 432.
Yes, and create healing music, and that's what whole tones was all about. They made music in the original tones that you can listen to, and people report they just feel better and sometimes healing and things like that.
And perhaps that's why music soothes the savage beast, as it is said.
That's right.
Wow.
And then that gets into the Aleph body. We're going to talk about how it's all broken down into 7 cycles.
Okay.
And each one of the 7 cycles is one of the original notes tuned to that. So back to EM fields. So EM fields are actually sending information too. So they carry information, they're sending information, and so there's frequency information carried on these, like we know sound. And therefore that communication is actually communicating between natural made things and man. But there's also communication between man-made things and man. So we have to remember that matter, that is chemistry, doesn't matter to energy. It's actually the energy that makes up the chemistry and makes up the matter. So all chemistry is rooted and based in energy. All natural EMFs produce proper communication within our bodies, and we would call this in-phase coherence. And all man-made EMFs produce out-of-phase incoherence. That means the body's ability to communicate is messed up.
Go figure.
And this comes back to what you were talking about. So when you're on the road and you're listening through the radio, and it's clear as day, and then you get into a dead zone or you go under a bridge. That's out-of-phase incoherence. So when you get into that out-of-phase incoherence, now you know that something's not communicating correctly. And either you're not getting the proper signal or the signal's been interrupted. But that's not good if your whole body works off of in-phase coherence and there's a whole electromagnetic Hebrew control system that's sending information all throughout the body so the body can operate. And then someone hits you with information that gets it all scrambled. Well, you can handle that for so long, but if it's constant all the time, eventually the body is going to start making something incorrectly or doing something incorrectly because the information has been interrupted.
Which we call disease.
Which we call disease.
Now, this may be skipping way ahead, but just one quick question. So would that mean that if you are going to do the Aleph Tav body system and touch these certain points in the sequence that needs to be done, is it better that a person is grounded and not having shoes on in a house? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter a whole lot, a little bit. So there's basic principles we get into. Usually you have a person laying on a table, and usually you have their shoes off because sometimes there's points on the feet. So you do want your shoes off. And then we get into the type of fabrics you're wearing, metals or EMFs that are on the body that could be interfering. So it's try to best to put yourself in a most natural, relaxed state when someone's working on you.
So we're going to get into the linen wool thing?
We are.
Oh man, okay. All right, take it away.
I don't know when that is, but maybe part 4 or maybe part 3. So maybe next. The other thing here is the illustration of natural chemicals versus synthetic chemicals.
Oh.
Right, so we know that most of what we want to use is herbs and plants and the things that Yah created. And Big Pharma, well, they come along and they study a plant and they isolate one little thing from the plant and then they find a way to synthetically create it. And then we find out that that doesn't really work well with the body because if you use they call it Kirlian photography, where you can look at the light source. We can find, and even looking at things under an electron microscope, we can look at synthetic vitamin C versus whole food vitamin C, and you see the energy field isn't the same. And it's all chaotic. So there's a difference between what comes straight from what Yah created and what man's making in a laboratory, even on an energetic level. So a lot of times they tell us, well, it looks the same chemically. And it's like, well, is it really the same? Or is there a subtle difference?
You can see that too. When I worked at the Hallelujah Diet, they made a big deal about eating mostly raw foods. And they would do that same photography they would slice an apple in half and use this photography method to see that the light, literally you'd see light coming off of the outline of the apple, and it was all very uniform, and the light was very just, it was even, strong and even throughout the whole thing. And then you cooked it.
And it's gone.
And it's gone, or it's like it's all collected at the top,
jaggedy,
and it's kind of dim over there and jaggedy, and it's not even, and it's crazy to see.
And so we can do the same thing with plants and synthetic versus natural, and so that's another example of what people just think of. Take that from chemistry now and go into the world of electromagnetism with your cell phones and everything, and that's what's happening. So when we have a cell phone on our hand all the day or carrying it on our body, well, you have that constant source of interference.
So it's not crazy to think, like people think I'm nuts, because I'm one of these people that's really sensitive electrically, biochemically sensitive, I guess. And if I have my phone in my pocket for any length of time, my hip will start to hurt.
No, that's not uncommon.
That's not crazy.
No, and they've had research years ago proving that cell phones were pretty dangerous to the body and that you really should not keep them on all the time.
Yeah, well, and as soon as I take it out of my pocket, I put it on the table, literally within 10 seconds, it subsides.
And there really are people who are electromagnetic sensitive. Actually, probably the first person was Tesla himself. Tesla, with all his experiments, basically made himself really electromagnetic sensitive. He would go crazy with just someone driving a car down the road or a clock in the other room. He said it sounded like someone hitting his head with a hammer. So he became really electromagnetic sensitive. So there are people like that I've worked with. They can't hardly even leave their house.
Yeah,
they don't have any modern technology.
Wow. So, well, I hope that isn't me, but because I work on TV. So that's right. I mean, we used to live in a real dry area, and I would, this is when you didn't have key fobs. You'd still put a key into the car, 20, 30 years ago, and I would approach the car, and there would sometimes be lightning bolts 5 inches long that would go from the car to me just because of, I guess, the way I was shuffling my feet. And it wouldn't happen to other people.
Yeah.
It would only happen to me.
Or there's some people that will, their bodies will kill devices. Like they can't wear a watch because they just keep killing the watch, or if they're working around. And it's actually, their body is actually a defense mechanism. It's trying to shut down the stuff that it knows is bad for it.
So if your iPhone battery is going dead sooner than your neighbor's,
yeah, that might be your body saying, hey, you need to do something about this.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. I guess back to biophysics of creation.
Sorry, I got you on track again.
There's so much to talk about here.
Right.
We have the same passage now we posted in the first one. This is Genesis 1. So in the beginning, Elohim created Aleph Tav, the heavens and the earth came to be, formless and empty, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the spirit of Elohim was moving over the face of the waters, and Elohim said, let light come to be, and light came to be, and Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim separated the light and darkness. So what do we see here? The first thing we see is Elohim created, or was with him, was the Aleph Tav, right? And the Aleph Tav can represent all 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. It can also represent Yeshua. It can represent his word. So Yah spoke into existence with his words, the Hebrew letters. Yah spoke light into existence. And light, which I'm going to call plasma here in a minute, is a form of energy that holds all things together and sustains life. So Yeshua is the word, the light of man, the life, the Aleph Tav, and he sustains all life. He holds all things together. And the body has a bioelectromagnetic telecommunications center for every single Hebrew letter on the body. And it's working on these same principles. So the Aleph Tav body system is made up of plasma, which is a type of light, and the Aleph Tav body system is Yah's language written on our body.
So the body has go back to that just for a second.
Sure.
The body has a bioelectromagnetic telecommunications center for every Hebrew letter.
Every Hebrew letter.
And that's when you discovered
on the body.
That's when you discovered, wait a minute, something's going on here.
Yes.
Okay. I'll bet you did not know that being an Ambassador Club member gets you exclusive early access to tickets to in-person events right here at a Rood Awakening headquarters. And I'll bet you didn't know that Ambassador Club members also get private invitations to surprise sales and other appreciation events, not to mention special gifts, cards, and other nice stuff. So why do ambassadors get all these perks? Because Ambassador Club members are the ones who keep the lights on and who make sure that new teachings keep coming. And they're the ones that we can count on because they're committed every month. The Ambassador Club is an automated donation program of $100 a month or more if you'd like. So if you appreciate the consistency of a Rood Awakening videos, social media posts, events, and most importantly, people to pray with you on the phone and help answer your questions, be a part of the consistency that makes it happen. Join the Ambassador Club.
I think this was really interesting when I got into this one, that the Hebrew word for or in Genesis there, well, the Hebrew word is or, and it's not what we technically think of. If you look at a Strong's, but then you also do an etymological dictionary, you get these interesting words here. I think typically when we think of light, we think of like the Hebrew word menorah, like light coming off of these lights around us or something like that. Or when we look at the etymological dictionary, can be translated as light, makes sense. Shine. What about this word? Ventilation. To ventilate. Air, order, breather. Fire, heat, glow. Now those ones kind of make a little bit more sense. Lightning, morning, sun, flood, herbs, day, light, bright, and clear. Well, there's some really interesting definitions there. So I've kind of come to the conclusion that what he really created in the beginning wasn't just light as we think of light, but the ether. And the ether is the medium in which everything exists. Now, for a long time, we were taught ether was kind of some new age nonsense concept, but it's just simply not true. We have at least 4 big names in electrical engineering that is the reason we have everything here we have today. First one was Tesla. But then we have Heaviside, Steinmetz, and Maxwell. And these men developed everything we have today for electrical technology. And all of them emphatically said that all their mathematics and all their circuits were based on the premise of an ether. Without the ether, you can't have AC current. So I think a lot of people don't want us to know about the ether. A lot of people don't want us to know about all the stuff Tesla worked on because he was working on plasma physics and he wanted like free energy. And he was even working with weather manipulation control, Nikola Tesla. And so when I was in electrical engineering, they said, okay, Nikola Tesla developed your AC current. He's the reason we have all this stuff and these other men, but don't worry, that's all you need to know. And I was like, we're not gonna study him? So I started studying Tesla's work and I was like, oh, I see why they don't want you to know about his work because you get into plasma energy and free energy and all kinds of stuff.
Is this where HARP gets their ideas?
This is, HARP is all Tesla. Yep. And all Tesla's patents, he had hundreds of patents. They were basically split between United States, Russia, and Germany, mostly. And I don't know if China got any of it, but so they've been years ahead of what the public sees working on Tesla-type technology.
Wow.
So you have this ether, and then the ether then breaks off and creates scalar waves, plasma waves, and electromagnetic waves. So it's like the medium. And then, so in physics, we would call it, you have actually a plasma, and then you have a gas, liquid, solid. And of course, they only teach you those last 3, right? And gas, liquid, solid. They don't teach you plasma. And so when structured water would be a form of plasma water. So a lot of people have heard of structured water, easy water, what we might call living water versus dead water, water that actually has an actual structure to it and that can hold memory. That's a type of plasma water. So,
because plasma, we usually just think in terms of blood. You people know that common term of plasma.
Yep.
Or a plasma screen TV that we had before the flat screens and all that.
Yes. So there's actually a whole physics out there called plasma physics, and it's not really taught much in the United States. But simply stated, plasma is kind of like a form of light that travels through different substances because it's not a liquid yet, it's not a gas. It's basically light and it can travel through different things.
And gather information on its way.
Yes.
Like you said, with the laser going through the structured water and into the body.
Yes. This is the same slide as we had last week, just reiterating that in Genesis 1 through 4, we have the word, we have sound, we have light, we have movement. So there's your, the Aleph Tav, you have frequency, wavelength, and vibration. Biophysical creation, the difference between transverse and longitudinal waves. This is a very interesting one. Most of us are familiar with transverse waves. So if we have a rope and I swing the rope, it takes a while and then it gets to you. And they say that's at the speed of light, supposedly. But there's a speed there. Is it really light? Not really. I would say light probably works more based on longitudinal, and that's where we get scalar waves. So if you've heard of spooky action at a distance, or equal action at a distance, some people call it quantum entanglements. And longitudinal waves, you can see on the screen, it's more almost like a solid cord, or this solid line. And if you're holding one end and I'm holding in one end and I push it, it's instant. You feel it instantly. It doesn't take time to actually get to you. And in there, you have these different spacings there. where it gets compressed and then separates. And that's where how light works. And people, I think, mistakenly think that light is both a particle and a wave, when it really isn't. What it really is, that's our perspective of a longitudinal wave. So where it's coming together and compressing, it looks like a particle. And when it's starting to separate, it looks like a wave. But that's just really from our perspective. It's probably neither. We probably really can't define what light really is. We just know it's there, and it's faster than we can really measure. They used to say we could measure it, but we know now that we really can't.
So really, so we can't measure the speed of light?
No, it's really a theory.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually a theory. And based on newer science, they're actually thinking that we might actually be wrong. It might actually be a lot faster than what we thought. Because the funny thing about light and things, when you get down onto a really small field, which we call, what's the big word everyone uses today? That my mind just went blank. Quantum.
Quantum. Oh, okay. Yes.
So when you get down into the quantum world, the problem is they have the problem of the observer. And they found out that when you start observing things react different. If the observer leaves the room, they can measure it one way, but when the observer comes in the room, it changes how the measurements are. So every time we look at it, it changes. So it's a kind of weird phenomena.
So not unlike when you think somebody's watching you.
Yes.
And you turn around and there's actually somebody there.
Yeah, it's almost like Yah's hiding things from us. Like every time we look at it, he's like, oh, it's going to work this way. But then when we look away, it's working a different way. It's like you're not allowed to see the matrix.
Right? Aptly, we have a background here, but yes.
Yes. So now we're going to show a nice video here. And I think this is going to give everyone a perspective of light and sound, really sound, and plasma. There's a number of things in here that are plasma. So people can get an idea of what creation was like when Yah spoke.
The film you're about to see has no characters. If you spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies on matter. Everything owes its existence solely and completely to sound.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So we have to know now that, like while I was asking you during the video there, no one's messing with the gas to make it do that. There's no special effects other than slowing down the video. That's all just really happening based on what the electrical energy that we're seeing there.
Yeah, and most of it coming from sound. So different sounds, different frequencies, and then how it's influencing matter to physically change. So if we're thinking back to Genesis again, so the spirit of Yah is hovering over the waters, and then he speaks, and imagine the power there. And you also see a lot of plasma physics there. Like the sun is a plasma. We usually say lightning is plasma, the plasma ball. You can see that he was touching the plasma ball. And I almost think of like, that's almost what it's like when we're touching 2 points in our body. It's like the energy is like making those connections and then flowing.
That would make sense.
So, really interesting just to see the power of sound and light and how it can change physical matter.
Yeah, and I think people need to pick up on that because I was going to ask you to repeat that, and I'm glad you said it. It will change physical matter.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yep. Matter does not matter to energy because energy creates the matter. On this screen, I just have this illustration of what we were talking about earlier, where, you know, if you're driving the car down the road and you have a proper communication with the radio, that's called in-phase coherence. And then when you don't, you lose that signal, it's called out-of-phase incoherence. And that's a fancy word in basically telecommunications. And obviously, everything in our body we want to have in-phase coherent. And there's a lot of things that can mess that up. The next slide, so this gives us that concept of, you can think of energy in the body almost like energy flowing through a hose. Like, that's the best way to think of it. And so there's water flowing through, there's proper circulation, there's proper resonance. And those is what we want. We want proper circulation and resonance in the body, in-phase coherent. And if we did, we'd have great health. But then someone comes along and steps on the hose, and what does that create? Well, it creates two problems, right? Behind where he stepped on it, you have a big influx of water building up. So we would call that inflammation, really stressed. But on the other side of the hose, where the water's supposed to be coming out, you only have a couple of trickles. And it's like water's trickling out, but not much, so we would call that congestion. I like this idea of congestion much better than blocked, because really when you're thinking of your energy systems in the body, they don't really get blocked. If they were blocked, you'd be dead. If they stop flowing, you're dead. But what happens is they start getting congested. It's like someone squeezing on that hose, and you get less and less energy flowing through the body, thus carrying less information to vital areas of the body. And then eventually something's going to happen. And you might have two different things happening in the body. You have where the cause is, but then, you know, your leg might be going numb and you might be having pain up here because the energy is not flowing the way it's supposed to. So basic physics principles of biophysics. Everyone knows E equals mc squared. Everything's energy. Everything in the body has a frequency. The bioelectric systems work via communication. They work via circulation and resonance, which you could call that force, movement, and information, which then manifests into the physical body. We see the unseen actually creates the seen, which the Bible says directly. And that kind of gets into this idea of shadow DNA that maybe we're going to talk about the next episode. Where does the DNA really come from? Is there actually, they actually call a shadow DNA as like a copy of the physical DNA. And they say that you actually have this like energetic DNA and a physical DNA in the body.
Oh, wow.
And these subtle energy systems do not like to be forced. So forced stimulation is never good, which is why the proper thing we want to do is just light touch and things that might stimulate the body but aren't forced stimulation. Like we don't want to hook ourselves up to a car battery and pass energy through the body. That would be a bad idea. And if people remember the slide we had at the beginning where you have the systems of the body and how they're made up from information is chemical, I put this up here again, but this time I'm showing how the Creator provides the breath of life, which is like light, force, movement, information, spirit, and then that creates the electromagnetic systems of the body, the informational system of the body, which is the Aleph-Tav body system. And then that all working together starts creating your chemistry and your cells and so on.
So really when we use this system to address a certain issue, we're really going to the really the cause of it, like really back to the true cause of what is going on.
Yeah, really like the root and the seed.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that more. Who's called the root? Who's called the seed? And it comes back to Yeshua, the light of the body. So who's really in control of this whole system of the body? Well, it's our Creator. He's the one in control of the system. And then just to leave people off with that quote again, matter doesn't matter to energy.
Wow.
Because energy creates the matter. So
matter. Say that again. Say it one more time.
Matter doesn't matter to energy, because the energy creates the matter.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So we got to get that through our heads.
And the energy comes first.
All right.
It's the unseen.
Unseen creates the seen. Okay. You have 6 days to get this into your head until we come back next week. Okay. So, Dr. Monzo, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week. Next week, we're going to get into the Hebrew bioenergetic temple.
Yes.
Which I'm assuming is this thing right here.
That's right.
Okay, so join us next week for Shabbat Night Live. Until then, Shavua Tov. Have a great week.
Whenever and wherever you are watching this broadcast, it represents hundreds of man-hours of production and post-production, and then it goes out to the world in several different languages. Why is this possible? It's because people like you support this ministry. We do our best to get this out freely to the entire world. Freely you have received. Now, this is your opportunity to do as Yeshua said, and freely give. Shalom, Torah fans. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with a friend. Tap the subscription button and the bell icon. And I promise to update weekly with in-depth biblical research. Be sure to download the new michaelrood.tv app for both mobile and home devices for even more commercial-free content.